Hi everyone. Today we're going to be looking at a dispute resolution body, so a place that you can go if you don't want to go to court to resolve a dispute. Normally these are for low-level disputes that you might have, and you might be looking for some sort of remedy around it. So we're looking at Consumer Affairs Victoria today as this resolution body. And we need to know two things when we're looking at it. You need to know what the purposes of the body is, what its role is, and when you might actually want to go to Consumer Affairs. So when is it appropriate to do? So in a case study, you're looking for whether or not you'd give advice to a particular person on whether they should go there. So what is CAV? Well, CAV is a business unit of the Department of Justice and Community Safety in Victoria. So it's part of the Victorian government. And they're also the Victoria's Consumer Affairs regulator. So they regulate issues around consumer affairs in terms of buying and selling goods. Okay, their main purpose, and I've got this from the website, their main purpose is to help Victorians be responsible and be informed about businesses and consumers. Okay, so what kind of things do they do? Well, they advise and review state government on consumer legislation and industry codes. They advise and educate consumers, tenants, businesses, and landlords on their rights and responsibility and any changes that might happen in these laws. They register businesses and occupations. They conciliate disputes between consumers and traders and landlords and tenants. And they enforce compliance with consumer laws. So that is kind of their main idea. In short, their main purpose is to basically provide consumers and traders, so the people running the business, and landlords and the tenants with a way to resolve disputes in a timely and cost-efficient manner. So again, it's about saving that time. So in order to kind of determine what kind of things that CAV is useful for, we've got to think about the jurisdiction. So what kind of disputes can they actually listen to? So the main disputes that they listen to is the supply of goods and services. So what I mean by that is normally it's a dispute between a consumer, someone who buys something, and a seller, someone who is selling the good. So often it's resolving things like, you've bought a faulty product, maybe you've bought something that you want to return and the sellers refuse to give you a refund on it. So very, very more often than not, it's about the supply of goods and services. However, there are a few things that Consumer Affairs also does. They look at residential tenancies. So this will be a dispute between your landlord and your tenant. So say, for example, you're requiring your landlord to fix a shower as there's no hot water, and your landlord's refusing to do that, you'd be able to take them to CAV to sort out that dispute. They also look at things in regards to retirement villages. So, for example, entering into a contract around what you're paying for the retirement village. If you decide that you want to leave the retirement village because you don't like their service, they do complaints around that. And they also look at owners' corporations. Now, if you buy into an apartment, for example, you are normally part of an owners' corporation, and as part of that is you're paying for common areas, essentially, or a way to look after a common area in an apartment block. So, for example, the garden out the front might be managed by the owners' corporation. They pay someone to make sure it's clean and nice. Or the staircase leading up to your apartment might need fixing. So you pay money to an owners' corporation who looks after the common areas in your apartment block, for example. So they look at disputes around those type of issues in common areas. So the main way that CAV resolves dispute is conciliation, and you can even do it over the phone, which means you can actually ring them up. They'll have a conciliator and they'll have the person that maybe you're in the dispute with, and they'll actually have the conversation with you and them on the phone. So we know that conciliators are expert in their fields, so CAV provides experts in the jurisdictions that we've just talked about. If the parties decide to come to a decision, it's not binding. However, you can decide to sign one of those terms of settlements, terms of agreements, which may help reflect the agreement that you have resolved or come to as a conclusion. So, when is CAV most appropriate to use in a scenario? Well, when there's a cost issue. So CAV offers free conciliation and free information. So it's useful if there's a cost issue in your scenario. If you're after informality and you want to reduce the stress levels that would come with going to court or even VCAT. The fact that you might need a speedy resolution, it's quite quick and it occurs over the phone, and the fact that maybe you're likely to reach some sort of agreement with the person. So you have a fairly good relationship with that person, and since participation is voluntary and non-binding, your expectation is you will come to some sort of conclusion. When shouldn't you use CAV? Well, firstly, if it's not in its jurisdiction, they can only help with consumer disputes and tenancy issues. CAV is voluntary, so if a party is unwilling to come to the table or participate, then it's not appropriate use. It's non-binding, so they have no power to force anyone to actually follow through with their agreements during conciliation. CAV also prioritizes where you've attempted to resolve the case yourself, or if the consumer is vulnerable or disadvantaged. So they prioritize those cases, which means if you haven't tried to resolve it yourself or you're not particularly vulnerable or disadvantaged, they may not suggest you use CAV. It may not be appropriate as it's too informal. Maybe it's quite a serious conflict and you actually need to go to a more serious body. And if the case is particularly large or complex, with difficult legal questions or multiple parties, then it would not be appropriate to kind of resolve your dispute through CAV. So quickly, when deciding whether to use it, you need to think about how the parties want to resolve their matter. You need to think about how much it costs. You need to think about whether the party wants a way to appeal, which you cannot do in CAV. You need to think about whether the parties are likely to take either CAV or VCAT, as in the previous video, seriously, whether or not they prefer formalities of court, and what methods they may use. All right, that's it today. Good luck with it. And I'm pausing, and it's taken a while for some